All right, let's get into our first discussion of the day now. By December, Nigeria might just get a new national carrier if the words of a federal government official, Chidi Izuwa, who is the acting Director General of the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, are to be believed.
Absolutely. Now, Izuwa says President Muhammadu Buhari has given the National Carrier Committee a timeline which must be met. Operators in the aviation sector say the floating of a national carrier would bring major developments to Nigeria's aviation industry.
Now, for them, the establishment of a national carrier will also have a ripple effect on Nigeria's economy, as it will ensure job creation, boost the country's income and capacity building for staff, and give the world a positive impression of the country. All right, we have joining us right now an aviation consultant, Tayo Ojuri, in the studio. Good morning.
Good happy morning to you.
It's really a good happy morning. Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
Same here.
All right, first off, let's start with the issue of national carrier. When the president mentioned it for the first time, Nigerians were really happy. Now, getting into what it takes to come up with a national carrier, considering how Nigeria Airways went down. First of all, what do we need to consider? What do we need to put in place first before we have a national carrier as a country?
Well, I'll flip the coin on the other side and say we really don't need a national carrier as it were.
Wow.
What we actually need is a flag carrier.
Okay,
over the years, you did mention Nigerian Airways, and with the liquidation of Nigerian Airways, we've seen lots of private airlines evolve. We've learned, and you've seen those have learned, some have died. We've had the 10-year jinx with some, but over time, it's evolved. And with this evolution, you've seen lots of privatization and commercial entities, commercial entrepreneurship in the aviation sector. That's what we should be driving over and beyond than government putting money into national carrier. In my opinion, government's efforts should be security, healthcare, education, and then the private sector entrepreneurship within a sustainable environment will drive the aviation sector. Aviation, like we all know, is the economic driver for the economy, huge economic driver. So if it's left in the whims and caprices of a good environment, good policy driven by entrepreneurs, that would drive the airline, national flag carrier, rather than the national.
All right, what's the difference really, and how beneficial would a flag carrier be than a national carrier? Smaller countries like Rwanda, Kenya have theirs, Ethiopia, they all have their own airlines and they are thriving. So why should Nigeria not have its? After all, it's the so-called big brother of Africa. I
always say that, but what's good for the goose might not be good for the gander. Yes, you did mention Ethiopia. Yes, they've done a good job of it. They failed, they've risen. Now they're on the 100 aircraft milestone. It's not the same story for South African Airways. South African Airways is bleeding and hemorrhaging. The new CEO is having a 3-year framework to turn around that airline. Same for Kenyan Airways. KLM came to buy a piece of it, and they've not been able to turn it around. So back to us, what's good for us in the peculiarity of our system? We just don't take what's good elsewhere. We should, what are the peculiarities in Nigeria and what works for our system? We know government does not manage, or well, the government management of an entity is not optimal. So what we should look at is private sector driven system. With that private sector system, you should actually look at British Airways was government owned. It actually evolved, still bearing British Airways, but is now owned by International Airline Group. Same for Iberia, owned by Spanish. Same for Vueling and Aer Lingus, Irish. They're all owned, driven by private sector. We've seen Etihad, and if we go to Middle East, we've seen Etihad. They actually started out well over 10 years. They actually had a break in strategic planning. We didn't actually augur well for them. With that, they've actually refocusing at this time. Not the same with Emirates. They're doing well. Qatar, doing well in the sense that they're not opening their books. Now they've been forced, based on open skies with the US, to open their books. So if they really open their books, how well are they doing, considering the huge capital influx and the thin margins for airline management? And now bringing in that home, if we already have domestic players, we should actually encourage them with great policies, put structures such as corporate governance, ownership, and then with the structure, partnerships, Forex, because Forex is a huge cost. Then fuel. With that, you actually see domestic airlines flourish and able to partner. The other thing, we actually have domestic airlines being what I'll call the king of the manor. They grow their domestic flights, they become regional carrier champions, and obviously what happens, it's a game of partnership, alliances. With those alliances, you now have international carriers partnering them, and you're feeding them. That you grow your synergy. You grow, and you're able to grow over years, rather than just have a Nigerian Airways. And talk about Nigerian factor. It's government-driven, government-owned, and we're looking from June to December 24th. We've not seen any transparency in that setup. What drives management these days is what we call aviation collaborative decision making. With that decision making, you engage stakeholders. That's not been the case. So once we're looking at the December 24th go live, with the December 24th go live, the aircrafts are not on ground yet. You have to be training, has not been done. Synergy with the different staffs, different units, infrastructure, and setup of local offices would actually...
And the problem with Nigeria Airways of old staff?
Not with that on ground.
So what you're saying, December is not realistic from where we stand right now. This is June.
Based on, again, the transparency is still an issue. We don't have inroad and insight into what model they're going to actually drive, that's going to drive the national carrier. Based on news information, they're actually saying it's going to be a wet lease, whereby it's ACMI, aircraft, crew, maintenance, and from a Middle East carrier. It's in the news from Qatar Airways. Well, with that, they'll be doing the flight, but that actually negates the government's position of creating employment for Nigerians. So if, yes, they come in, they carry, but that's going to be a conflict because they already come in here and they're not going to be as committed as if Nigerian operators. So that's where the challenge is.
And then looking at the challenge really and talking about this national carrier which Nigerians are looking up to, and for what you just told us, how all-inclusive rather, excuse me, would it be at the end of the day if Nigerians don't get to work in the new company to take charge of the national carrier?
Well, based on that news information as well, they're saying the long haul will be Qatar, and they're looking at getting either, I knew the Honorable Minister of Aviation spoke with Boeing and has spoken with Airbus. Airbus is trying to get a foothold in our country or in the sub-region. So they're trying to get Airbuses, but how efficient are those fleets? We actually have those triangular routes, Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. Is that optimal? It's not every day you have traffic on those routes.
True.
So it's about developing your secondary airports. You've seen the domestic airlines do a good job of that, of developing Uyo, Abuja, Benin, Abuja, and all those secondary, Kaduna. And so actually, you're able to, but with those kind of aircrafts, you're actually going to be flogging, you're not going to be optimizing it. Your yield is not going to be good. Because if you carry an aircraft has, that aircraft might have about 120, 150 passengers, and you're carrying 60 on one way and maybe 30 on the other way, it's not rocket science. Within a short time, you're going to go bankrupt. And obviously, there are lots of shocks within the aviation sector as well. Aviation, like we know, based on trend analysis and data, is the first to get hit when there's a shock in the system, and it's the last to come up back. Another factor that will affect it is the fact that aviation is driven by disposable income. How much of that disposable income do Nigerians have at this time? That will drive that. Thirdly, we have the issue of it's government driven. We're at the tail end of this government. The management is formed, and come May 29 next year, if it's the same government or there's a change in government, the management might change. Continuity becomes an issue because we've seen it in instances where same government and there's no continuity. So those are the things that actually does affect.
All right, you are advocating for a flag carrier instead of a national carrier.
Absolutely.
The local airlines we have, AMCON has taken over almost all of them, and we've heard of how some of them are owing the authorities. They have different challenges here and there. So if the local airlines are not able to break even yet, and issues of management also are involved, how will any of them be recommended to be a national carrier?
Again,
or flag carrier, sorry.
Yes. Again, it's all about policy, policies, setting up the right policies, corporate governance, and enforcement. When you actually ensure that no airline is owned, operated, and managed by one single person, it has to be maybe a limited liability, or just have structure within that airline and technical partnership that actually opens it to growth. That doesn't mean that the airline will not have issues. We've had lots of big airlines crumble. The airlines are still crumbling because it's a Virgin. Last year, they didn't make a profit because there are lots of drivers. Now, IATA actually, earlier this month, has now reviewed downward the increase for this year, the growth. Why so? Because the price of fuel is going up. If there's a socio-political issue that might affect the airline issue as well. We're looking at a summer that's going to grow. So what I'm saying in essence is the fact that if there's structure within the private sector, if there's enforcement, you actually have those airlines, domestic airlines, grow and become brides of strategic partners that are able to come and invest. Don't forget, we have a huge population. Out of the 600 million people in the West Coast, we actually have a huge, and we have a penchant for traveling as well. So with that, and the location, socio-political, the geographical location helps us a great deal. So that's actually going to help us a great deal to push. But it's just ensuring that the Nigerian factor of leadership and management is carried on to that airline sector. We're able to grow the domestic airlines, offer them. You know without a doubt that you didn't mention Arik. Arik started off in London. They started off in US. But obviously, with right partnership, they're able to actually go further. Well, that didn't happen, but obviously, maybe I know that Air Peace is growing. If given the necessary assistance, they'll do a
In fact, many thought Arik was going to be adopted for the national carrier.
So many people say, some people are even, the grapevine saying it's going to be there'll be a merger between Arik and Aero because they're ready. But we'll wait and see.
Wait and see. And it seems that the flag carrier option would be a cheaper one for the government.
Well, considering the time deadline.
But how about the issue of listing or going public, where aircrafts can raise monies from the stock exchange and the Nigerians become the owners of it?
That would work. And actually, like you said, that's the ultimate of privatization or private ownership. And you're actually now liable to the shareholders, which drives productivity and drives customer service as well. So that's actually possible. But obviously, it's part of the structure, part of this governance, part of the policies. And with that, you're able to actually ensure that they toe the line. We've seen Medweave go PLC, but obviously how much of their shares do they put in the market? Yeah. So if that ownership is still wielded by one person, it actually is an issue.
Okay. And then, of course, there is this problem of multiple taxation that airlines are complaining about. In fact, they were still on the news on, I think, either on Monday, still complaining that they would not pay any more VAT on some of the airlines. And is a current issue, really, they're battling with. And knowing that because of the economy now, like not even a quarter of Nigerians are flying because of the cost of it. At the end of the day, really, would you even say that it should be something to be considered at this time?
Yes, the AON, Airline Operators of Nigeria, have declared from the 14th, I believe, of June, not to pay VAT because there's multiple taxation. In other climes where we've had experience, we actually see the window whereby it's actually merged and you have a payment and that payment splits across the major stakeholders. But whereby you're paying so many agencies along the line, you find out the airline, those are part of the factors that affect the growth and sustainability of the airline. We are back to a national carrier. You have to actually look at it from the periscope of airline economics. Back to that, how are they going to be able to sustain that? Because you find out that the cost of operating is high. Are they going to now have a government
pumping money into
it? And that's going to be at the detriment of the other players. It's not going to be level field. So that's where the issue, fear of the issues. But we're waiting for the government to come out. They've actually set up a committee, which again is made up of all heads of federal government agencies. I don't see the logical sense in that, whereby you're not engaging private operators. With that collaborative decision making, you're able to learn from other people that operate these airlines or have operated these airlines. Even if they had issues, they can actually advise on what those issues are. And the other part of it is the BASA, the routes that are being optimized by private airlines now. What's going to happen to those routes? Because you can only go so many flights into London or into these other places. How are those routes going to be utilized over time?
All right, you mentioned Ethiopian Airline earlier on, and it seemed like it's a success story, but what are they doing differently?
In my opinion, and true studies, what I think they've done, and it's worked for them, is lack of government interference. Okay. Independence of that airline, total independence. So it's been, with that independence, is now driven and operated like a commercial entity. Independent commercial entity, whereby it's devoid of being called from Abuja or from Addis Ababa in their instance. So whereby you're being called every week to report to Addis Ababa or wherever, that's a huge deterrent. So, and with that growth, they're able to compete. With that competition, they now grew the built capacity. They built the education. We have a training school here, but they've actually built training school. They built the engineers as well, and then obviously they formed an alliance. They're part of the Star Alliance.
Yeah, Star Alliance.
And with that alliance, all this, then obviously that culture of we have to make it work. Because over years, they went down at some point after doing their work, but they came back. But obviously, over this, we've seen this as some of the driving factors that made them a success.
They learned from their mistakes.
Exactly.
All right, let's go back to the BASA agreement, which many foreign airlines enjoyed for years, not until now that few Nigerian airlines are trying to move out of the country. And that was really one of the reasons for the new national carrier to be even considered in the first place, for Nigeria to benefit from that agreement, which we didn't benefit for so long. So now, if eventually we have a national carrier, what happens? Would you say that there would be need for some sort of arrangement or division on the percentage the carrier now should get as to other private airlines, knowing that it would be favored over others?
In my opinion, I believe what counts is the passengers. And it's the airline operations, airline management is more of an art and a science now than a science. What is now being done is for you to go on a route, you actually do a route analysis. You have a route objective yield management on that aircraft. What are the drivers on those routes? And what are the demography of the passengers? Yes. Not just having a light bulb experience, say, oh, that route is good because people want to go there. You find out that when United came, there was the oil. So there was medical tourism. There were students going back and forth on that route. When the price of oil went up, they didn't see a reason to continue that route. They stopped coming to Lagos. Sure. So those are the drivers. So back to your question, what's going to happen with the BASA is you already have people running those routes now, the foreign airlines. And what they've done over that has worked well for them is up these alliances as well. And the connectivity, rather than what we have, which is origin and destination. Maybe you're going from Lagos straight to New York. But if you were going to Florida for your summer, well, you find out that you have to buy another ticket, and it doesn't work well. The overtime as well, we've built points and loyalty. That's a huge entrapment for passengers.
Tayo Ojuri, aviation consultant, thank you very much for your analysis
pleasure.
on the show.
Thank you very much
for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.